Now in today's video, we're going to discuss the HeadRush Looperboard and whether it has been worth the upgrade from the Boss RC300, which I've previously been using for probably the past 6 years. Hey, what's up? I hope you're having a fantastic day and welcome back to another video. Now today we're finally going to be reviewing the HeadRush Looperboard. Now I know this video is highly anticipated here on the channel and I finally feel like I'm ready after all of the testing that I have been doing with the loop station to give you my verdict. Now throughout the filming of my HeadRush Looperboard Ultimate Guide, the course where I take you through every single setting on the HeadRush Looperboard, you can check that out in the video description down below if you're interested in picking it up. I actually wrote down some of my thoughts on the looper pedal compared to my Boss loop stations and just overall what I felt about the pedal. So this is going to be a very thorough review because I've literally been through every single setting on the loop station in order to teach you it within that guide. Now, if you don't know what the HeadRush Looperboard is, let me introduce you. Now, the HeadRush Looperboard is referred to as the most powerful consumer loop station. And the reason why it's so powerful is because it has a quad cortex processor. So theoretically, it kind of has its own built-in computer, which allows you to do some insane processing power. You can customize loads of different settings. There's so many different options. Now, the really cool thing about the HeadRush Looperboard is actually its output quality of the audio. Now, the HeadRush Looperboard is a 4-track loop station, and it has an output quality of WAV 24-bit, which is some of the best out there on the market. Now, yes, some of the new Boss loop stations have currently got 32-bit processing, which is going to sound incredible, but 24-bit is up there for a multi-track loop station of this many tracks. Now, on the HeadRush Looperboard as well, you can do a maximum of 99 loop layers on each of these tracks, so you've got plenty of options for your overdubbing needs. Now, the main reason why I picked up the HeadRush Looperboard was because of their Firmware 2.0 update. And this is one of the coolest things about the HeadRush Looperboard. Because it runs software, they can update it whenever they like. So they can update it, constantly add new features, or even change the loop pedal entirely with a whole brand new piece of software. Because you just simply update the loop pedal, and then you could have a brand new loop pedal with brand new features that you've never seen before. That's one of the major selling points of this loop pedal, is the updatability that it has because of its onboard operating system that can be updated. Now, if you actually want to see the introduction to Firmware 2.0 and break down some of the changes, you can check out the video over here. But essentially, they just sort of changed the user interface and really refined various different things. And one of the coolest things that they really simplified was understanding the variety of different loop modes. Now, inside of the HeadRush Looperboard, there's 5 different loop modes that you can actually switch out. You know, you can have fixed length, synced, or like free. So there's all these different styles of modes the looper pedal can actually running depending on what style you actually loop within. So obviously the dead bog standard default mode is just like how a Boss RC300 works out the box. All of the loop tracks are fixed lengths and they're linked to one another. But then you can also change modes and actually start making different length loops, combining and syncing them all together to do much more advanced live looping. Now, something I'm a huge fan of with the HeadRush Looperboard is the ability to record simultaneous loop tracks. So for example, because we have such advanced audio routing options, we could set up one loop track to specifically record guitar audio and another loop track to specifically record vocal audio. And then we could turn a setting on that allows you to record both the vocal loop track at the exact same time as you record the guitar loop track. And in fact, I did this inside of this performance video that you can check out over here. I record the vocals at the same time as just playing the guitar, but because I set up advanced audio routing, it meant the guitar didn't record onto the vocal track and the vocal track didn't record onto the guitar track. Insane customization. Now, something that was a little bit disappointing about this feature was the fact you have to have recorded one loop track already. So you can't do this from scratch. So you can't, for example, from the first loop record them simultaneously. You have to do a primary loop and then you can unlock this feature after the master loop has been recorded. I found this a little bit irritating and a little bit limiting because the feature was so useful, but hey, it is what it is. Now, by far, probably the most impressive features on the HeadRush Looperboard is the audio routing capability. Now, within the onboard menus, we have so many different options in how we can actually route audio in and out of the looper station. And the reason why it's so important, this type of functionality, is it because it allows advanced live loopers to go even further and fine-tune their live looping setup and even unlock extra things they can do within their performance. Now for me, I use the RC505 on my main live looping rig, and the HeadRush Looperboard's audio routing capabilities just makes that loop station look like a beginner's looper pedal. Seriously, they've nailed it in HeadRush for what you can actually do within this menu. Now, an example of what you could do with the audio routing is with the loop tracks. Now, obviously the HeadRush Looperboard has 4 looper tracks, and there are 4 main outs on the back of the looper pedal. So what you could do is you could run each loop track in mono, and then you could dedicate each track to have its own output. So you could output track 1 via output 1, track 2 via output 2, 3, 4, etc. And then you could even use the headphone output for your input monitoring. So anything you play into the loop pedal on your guitar, for example, that goes out of the headphone out, and you could plug that into your mixer desk as well. So you theoretically have a total of 5 outs that you can do insane options within the menu with. Now, with that example setup that I just discussed there, that allows you to give fantastic flexibility to the front of house engineer. They now have independent control of each loop track coming out of your looper pedal, along with a separate feed of the guitar audio as well that would be recorded into the loop station too. So this is a dream for anyone that's mixing audio live on stage, and probably one of the best features of the HeadRush. Now, another awesome feature within the audio routing menu on the HeadRush Looperboard is actually the click track options. Now, obviously, looping to a click track has a lot of pros and cons, and I did a video over here ages ago talking about some of the reasons why you should maybe considering it. But overall, it allows you to be more accurate within your live looping performance because you can loop to a fixed grid and a fixed tempo. Now, I primarily on the Boss RC505 use this feature called record counting, and this basically goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it starts initializing the record process after you click the record button. Now, for me, the 1 measure record counting on the Boss RC505, I always felt was a little bit too short. It just never gave you enough time to sit in and get used to the tempo before the actual looping process begun. Well, the cool thing about the HeadRush Looperboard is the click track options are fantastic. You can do a record counting of 1 measure all the way through to 4 measures. So this means you can have as long as you like for that counting before you even begin recording on the loop pedal, which I really do like. It actually took me a while to get used to the 2 measures because I was so used to having such a short prep time on the RC505. Beautiful feature that I'm a huge fan of. Now, obviously, we can route this click track to a pair of headphones within the audio routing options so the audience doesn't hear it. And this brings me onto something that I wish they could improve with the headphone routing options on the HeadRush Looperboard. And that's the fact there's no ability to set up any track panning inside of the headphone monitor mix menu. And the reason why I think it's essential to have some form of panning within the headphone mix is because it can be very fatiguing on the ears to have a mono mix in your in-ear monitors or the headphones, whatever you prefer to use. Now, I would have loved it if I could have panned my guitar to my left, my drums to the right, and then had the click track coming in central in my headphone in-ear monitor mix, just to give myself a little bit more space and feel less claustrophobic when I was using in-ear monitors. It's something that I'm sure they could implement in the future within this parameter. Now, for me, a customization option that I found very useful was the MIDI capability of the HeadRush Looperboard. Now, me personally, I'm not too impressed with the foot switch layout of the HeadRush. In fact, it deterred me for a very long period of time to actually pick up the loop pedal because it just didn't really match on the surface my workflow. Now, I'm pleased to say that there are lots of customization options in regard to the foot switches inside of the menus, which really do allow you to tailor this, and it no longer became a problem once I experimented further with the pedal. But an added bonus is actually the fact you can hook up an external MIDI foot remote to also basically customize and create your own custom layout on a MIDI foot switch by mapping a variety of different parameters and different buttons, which is super easy to set up as well. HeadRush Looperboard has basically done 80% of the work for you, and you simply just have to match up the codes with the command to your foot switch and you're up and running in probably about 10-15 minutes. It hardly takes any time whatsoever. Another MIDI feature that I'm a huge fan of is actually the quality of the MIDI clock on the HeadRush Looperboard. It's probably the best MIDI clock I've used on the loop station this year. It's insane. There's hardly any fluctuation in the tempo information being sent across the MIDI cable, which allowed me to do some crazy things. I could hook up the HeadRush Looperboard to Ableton, or I could hook up Ableton to the HeadRush Looperboard, and I had fantastic results doing it either way. Far better than my RC505 that I've tried so hard to get great results from. Now, if you want to learn more about the MIDI features in depth, check out this video over here where I compared the RC300 to the HeadRush Looperboard and I broke down all of the MIDI stuff in a dedicated video. Now, for me, one of the areas on the loop station where I was extremely impressed but also extremely disappointed was the built-in loop effects. Now, usually on a loop pedal, I never use the pre-provided built-in loop effects because they usually sound terrible and they aren't very useful. Whereas with the HeadRush Looperboard, they provide you with some very high quality sounding effects of which you can customize quite extensively. Now, the way it works on the HeadRush Looperboard is they are referred to as effects racks. Now, you can have a total of 4 effects racks, and then within those racks are multiple different effects that obviously culminate together to create the effects rack. Now, the way it works inside of these effects racks is basically you can change the parameters of each individual effect. So you could take a reverb, for example, and you could adjust the mix of that reverb, or you could take a delay and you could adjust the length of the delay, the mix of the delay, all the standard parameter changes that you're used to when you're customizing effects. But where it starts to get extremely disappointing is how you can change the effects within the effects chain. Everything's predetermined. There's no way to adjust the actual effects that are present inside of the effects rack. So for example, let's say you wanted to switch out a reverb for a distortion pedal. There's no way to do that whatsoever because the way the effects racks work is basically they're just presets that have predetermined effects within them, and then it's locked off at that. All you can do is change the parameters of those effects, which in my opinion is very, very restrictive and a little bit disappointing because it's so close, but the execution just isn't quite nailed because it lacks that extra layer of customization. Now, a feature I would love to see HeadRush implement in the future is the ability to customize the effects racks icon. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because I often found myself using vocal rack presets on my guitar. And the reason why I was doing this is because there were certain effects found within the vocal presets that I found extremely useful to apply onto my guitar. For example, the transpose effect, turn my guitar into a bass. You could only get that effect within the vocal effects racks. But it goes back to my point once again that you can't customize the effects within the effects rack chain and how important that feature is. So something that would have just made my reference a little bit easier while performing would have been the ability to switch out the picture of the vocal microphone for a picture of a guitar icon, just to make my life a little bit easier when I was switching effects on and off, because it did get a little bit confusing when I was using a microphone picture to turn on my guitar effects. So now let's share my final thoughts on the HeadRush Looperboard. Is it actually worth it? Is it actually any good? Now, to be honest, I think the HeadRush Looperboard is an absolutely brilliant piece of equipment. If you are an advanced live looper and you want the best feature set, then I'd 100% recommend taking a look at the HeadRush Looperboard. Now, for me, the HeadRush Looperboard could replace my Boss RC300 literally like that. I've really enjoyed the new features, a much more refreshed version almost of the RC300 that I wish it could have done. But I have really been struggling to transition from the RC505 to the HeadRush Looperboard on my main rig. And you may think that would be the place where the HeadRush Looperboard would be best suited because of its advanced feature set. And the reason why I'm really struggling is because I've gotten so comfortable with the Boss RC505 being a tabletop loop pedal, as well as having the MIDI foot remote, which is my neck depacer. So I've got that dual functionality of tabletop and foot remote to control the loop pedal, whereas the HeadRush is primarily, obviously, it's a floorboard looper pedal. If I wanted to get tabletop functionality, I would have to put my neck depacer on the table, and it's just starting to get less intuitive, and I don't have all the access to the volume faders and all that type of stuff that I love having just on the surface of my live looping rig to access instantaneously. So in regards to replacing my RC505, I am really struggling and to be honest, I don't know whether the HeadRush actually will replace it. I'd love it to see in the future if HeadRush actually made some additional things to combine with the HeadRush Looperboard, you know, tabletop controller, floor, MIDI remote, something like that. That'd be really cool. So you can almost have an ecosystem of the HeadRush Looperboard. But I'll see how the software updates and things go in the future and whether I eventually get used to it and do replace my RC505 on my main rig. But as of right now, I am still sticking with the Boss RC505. Now, don't forget to check out the link in the video description down below if you want to pick up my HeadRush Looperboard Ultimate Guide so you can get the most out of your HeadRush Looperboard if you choose to buy this loop station. But as always, I've been Ben Rollins. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.